What if the biggest battle of your life was never meant to be won by the strongest person? What if the world keeps measuring power while God measures faith? This isn't just the story of a giant. It's the story of an ordinary boy who changed history forever. And by the end, you may realize that your greatest weakness could become your greatest weapon. The Valley of Elah, a place where fear echoed louder than swords. On one side stood the army of Israel. Thousands of trained soldiers, heavy armor, sharp weapons, experienced commanders. On the other side stood the Philistines. Their champion was unlike anything the world had ever seen. His name was Goliath. Nearly 10 feet tall, covered in bronze armor, a spear as thick as a weaver's beam. A warrior trained from childhood. He didn't simply fight battles, he ended them. Every morning he stepped into the valley. Every evening he came back again. For 40 days. The same challenge, the same insult. Send me your champion. If he defeats me, we will serve you. But if I win, you will become our slaves. Silence. No one moved. Not the generals, not the captains, not even King Saul. Because fear had become stronger than faith. Miles away, there lived a shepherd. Not a prince, not a commander, just a young man named David. His brothers were soldiers. He wasn't. His job was simple. Take care of sheep. Protect them. Feed them. Stay unnoticed. To everyone else, David looked insignificant. But while people saw a shepherd, God was preparing a king. One morning, David's father called him. Take food to your brothers. It sounded like an ordinary errand, but history often begins on ordinary mornings. David arrived at the battlefield. Instead of courage, he found panic. Instead of battle, he heard shouting. Then he saw him, Goliath, laughing, mocking, humiliating the people of God. David looked around. No one moved. He couldn't understand. Why is everyone afraid? The soldiers looked at the giant. David looked at God. That changed everything. His own brothers became angry. Why are you here? Go back to your sheep. Sometimes the first people to doubt your calling are the people closest to you. But David refused to let criticism define him. His courage only grew stronger. Word reached King Saul. The young shepherd was brought before the king. Saul stared in disbelief. You are only a boy. Goliath has been fighting since he was young. It sounded logical. It sounded reasonable. It sounded impossible. But faith doesn't begin where logic ends. Faith begins where trust begins. David answered, I have protected sheep. When lions came, I fought. When bears attacked, I fought. The same God who rescued me then will rescue me now. David wasn't remembering his victories, he was remembering God's faithfulness. Saul placed his own armor on David, heavy, expensive, royal. But after a few steps, David stopped. I can't fight in someone else's armor. So he took it off. One of the greatest lessons in history happened without a battle. Never fight someone else's war using someone else's identity. David remained exactly who God created him to be. A shepherd, with a sling, 5 smooth stones. Nothing more, nothing less. The valley became silent. 2 men walked toward each other, one covered in bronze, the other holding a shepherd's staff. Goliath laughed. Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? The giant saw weakness. God saw victory. David shouted, You come against me with sword and spear, but I come in the name of the Lord Almighty. One sentence, one declaration, one difference. Goliath trusted his strength. David trusted God. Then David ran, not away, toward the giant. He reached into his bag. 1 stone, not 5, just 1. The sling began to spin, faster, faster. Then, release. The stone cut through the air. The battlefield held its breath. 1 second, 1 impact. The stone struck Goliath in the forehead. The giant staggered. Then he fell. The earth shook. Silence. The impossible had happened. The smallest warrior had defeated the greatest giant. Not because he was stronger, but because God was greater. The Philistine army panicked. Israel charged forward. Fear changed sides. One act of faith transformed an entire nation. David picked up Goliath's own sword. The giant's weapon became the symbol of God's victory. Sometimes, the thing meant to destroy you becomes proof of your miracle. Years later, David would become king. But his greatest victory didn't happen on a throne. It happened when nobody believed he could win. Because giants don't always carry swords. Sometimes they look like failure, debt, fear, loneliness, rejection, an impossible diagnosis, a broken dream. And every morning, those giants whisper, "You can't. You'll never make it. Give up." But David's story still speaks. Don't measure your problem against yourself. Measure it against God. Because history is rarely changed by the strongest person. It is changed by the one who refuses to surrender their faith. Maybe you've been overlooked, ignored, undervalued. Maybe people only see your limitations. But remember, they saw a shepherd. God saw a king. The world will always look at the size of your giant. God looks at the size of your faith. And sometimes, all it takes to change your entire life is one step, one stone, one act of courage. Because when human courage meets divine help, even giants must fall.